Hello, Carlos. Hello, my friends. Be very welcome.
Hey, Douglas. Hi, folks. Good to see you.
And here we are again in this moment of the artist. Today we are going to celebrate Mary Burmeister's Spears, and we are really happy to talk about her. Shall we invite our friends, Carlos?
I think so. Who's the first? Who'll be the first?
The first one today is Heather Ward. Heather, please come and join us.
My name is Heather, and I would like to present a brief introduction to how Mary discovered the art and a little history about Mary's life. I was not privileged to have met Mary, had a session with Mary, but through the eyes of the teachers and the readings of the textbooks and everything that she's written and everything that has been shared, I feel very much like I have met Mary. Mary was born Mary Mariko Lino on the 21st of October 1918 in Seattle, Washington, to a Japanese immigrant family. And she was raised into both the culture of America and also Japanese. When the war broke out in the 1940s, Mary at that time would be about 22 years of age. It was a time of conflict between the USA and Japan. And Mary went to Japan to study the Japanese language with the intention of becoming a translator. And her goal was always to be the best student in the class. And while Mary felt that she was very good with her Japanese, she was a little bit surprised when she went there that they had her start from the very beginning. She returned back to the USA in 1945 for a brief period, but then she was appointed by the US government and sent back to Japan to work in the US Embassy there. And while she was there, she gave lessons to lessons of English to Japanese families. One evening in 1946, her class was cancelled because a lecture was being given by Master Jiro Mirai. Mary was invited by one of her students to stay, and she wasn't really aware of what the lecture was about, but she was very happy to stay. I would now at this stage like to read to you something that was a personal recitation from Mary, which was in the edition of What Mary Says, and that was written, and I would like to share this with you about how Mary came across Jiro Mirai and her introduction to Jin Shin Jitsu. So Mary quoted, "In the late 1940s, I was guided to Master Mirai. At the time of our meeting, I was searching for that something which I believe each one of us experiences at one time or another in our lifetime. Master Jiro Mirai greeted me with, 'Would you like to study with me and take a gift from Japan to America?' Just a simple question. I had no idea of the depth of the meaning at the time, so I just as simply replied, yes. Upon attending his first lecture, I was filled with humility and awe of the why I was here. My search ended and an art of living opened up for me. It was not until nearly 30 years later of continued study that the impact of the meaning in Master Mirai's first greeting became a reality to me. Jin Shin Jitsu physiophilosophy is truly the art of happiness, the art of longevity, and the art of benevolence. It is the creator's art personally for myself, the art of getting to know, help myself. And it was from this moment on that Mary spent the next 7 years studying with Jiro Marai and became a very dedicated student. Her father, Uhachi, I hope I've pronounced it correctly, who happened to be the same age as Jiro Marai. He was also a student of the art at that time, but he was not at the same level as Mary. Moving on with Mary's life, Mary met her future husband, Gilbert Burmeister, who was a soldier, and he was also based in Japan in the 1950s. And he was unwell, and Mary had suggested to him that he have a session with Jiro Marai. And this he did, and of course, Mary's magic hand, Jiro's magic hands, he recovered. He was very attracted to Mary, and he liked her a lot, and he wanted to be close friends with Mary, but Mary was very private and she was very much involved in her study and her work, so it made it very difficult for him. I think in 1952, in 1952, Gilbert had to return back to America, and 2 months later, he sent a telegram to Mary asking her to marry him. Mary sought guidance from Jiro Marai, and she wanted to stay in Japan, but Jiro said to her that she needed to follow her heart. So the following year, 1953, she would be 35 years old. She returned to the USA, to California, and she married Gilbert. She continued her Jin Shin Jitsu study, and her father, meanwhile, remained in Japan, and he continued to study and practice, and he sent Mary notes from the classes. I'm not sure of the exact date, but it was not long after Mary had returned to the USA that she became very unwell and had to be hospitalized. She was effectively paralyzed and she couldn't understand why. But when we think of a quote that Mary said was, often when we start to clean the house, we realize how dirty it is and we get a big lesson. And perhaps that quote came from her experience in the hospital. She spent around 2 months in the hospital, and Jiro came to visit her and give her sessions twice weekly during that time. And one day he came to the hospital, listened to her pulses, and he said, "You will be well enough to go home tomorrow." And she did. Moving on to Mary's life, she would be 42 years of age in 1960, and sadly, her father passed. And 2 months later, so did Jiro Marai. Mary was devastated. She felt lost. She was busy with her children and her life, but she continued to practice the art within her family. She was lost because she felt that that was the end of the art. However, in 1960, more of her students and friends, not so much students, but friends, wanted to know more about the art. And so Mary started to teach and prep classes. In 1966, and I think she'd be 48 years of age at this point, the first Jin Shin Jitsu textbook was completed, and it was named Technique for Manual Circulation. By 1971, the name was changed to the Art or the Pathway. And the very last hands-on edition was in, I think, published in 1979. It should be mentioned that a lot of the flows that we have in the textbooks came from conversations that Mary had with Jiro Marai. Moving on with Mary's life, it was when Mary and her family moved to Scottsdale, Arizona in 1972, that her Jin Shin Jitsu practice and teaching really took off. And as much as she had her own space, she had her own support group to help her so that she could focus on her studies, on her practice, and on her teaching. So moving on now to the 70s, during the 70s, Mary travelled a lot teaching 5-day classes, and in 1977, she presented her first Jin Shin class in Europe, in Bonn, in Germany. It was also during the 70s that Mary developed the project of self-help classes, and all the info was presented in one block, both the practical and the philosophy. And for the practical, she set the self-help books. This was a major contribution from Mary to the art of Jin Shin Jitsu. She took 15 years to complete these books and present them. Then by the end of the 1980s, the Living the Art class was presented, and this class bridges the information between the self-help books and textbooks 1 and 2. Mary realised as the art was being more and more spread that she really needed to teach more and needed probably assistance. So it was at that time that she chose a group of students to train to be teachers of the art. She actually wrote 2 more books after that, Happy Hands for Children, and the other book was the training for new teachers with a question and answers book. And the latter, the question and answers book, was actually based on the translations of chapters 1 and 2 of the Kojiki. In 1989, 71 years of age, Mary suffered an accident. She hit her head off of a table, causing bleeding to the brain. And while she recovered, she had to stop teaching, but she did not stop giving sessions. She did not stop her practice. And she went to Scottsdale and lots of people came, and sometimes she simply touched a point. There's many, many stories if you watch the videos about, people's experiences with Mary during this period after she was unable to teach. It's quite amazing, quite amazing. And finally, on the 27th of January 2008, Mary returned back to the Creator. She was very much loved and respected throughout the community and by all of those people whose lives she touched. She had such a personalised relationship with each of her students and those who she supported through the art. She was referred by some as Mother Courage, humble but not modest. She had a wonderful sense of humour and her generosity was limitless. She spent a good number of her years when she was raising her children. She looked after also, she had 5 adopted children, and she was also working in the hospitals. So her life was in service from the beginning to the very end. And it still continues to be in service through the teachers, the students, the practitioners. Yeah. Mary once said, at some point, we will know Jin Shin Jitsu so well that all we will need to do is hold our fingers. It's not about believing in Jin Shin Jitsu, it's about knowing. We have hands of light. We are light beings. Our only job is to be willing to take care of ourselves so that when someone does need our jumper cables, we can be ready. Jin Shin Jitsu is the art of breathing. If I let go of everything, I am available to everything. What I don't release prevents what I can receive. And now I would like to invite you all to spend the next few minutes practicing one of Mary's highly recommended self-helps, which is holding the high 19s and the high 1s. And for those of you present today who are not familiar with the art, the high 19, we are going to take our left hand and we're going to hold just about 3 inches above the elbow of the right hand. And then with our right hand, we're going to go to inside the thigh of the left leg, just about 3 inches above the knee. And we're just going to gently hold, gently relax, dropping our shoulders, letting go, bowing our head to be the smile. And as we exhale gently down the front, this practice helps to keep our shoulders clear. It's the deepest self-help practice that we have. We know that everything in life relates to the breath. We come into this life and we exhale. We leave this life and we exhale. High 19 connects us to our conscious, our awareness. Safety energy lock is our prime mover in life. If we want to stay in our power and be heard, go to your high 19s and your high 1 and just exhale gently from head to toe and inhale from toe to head, dropping your shoulders. her 19's perfect balance, authority, and leadership. This beautiful gift that brought us into this world, and when we leave it. Mary says, we are the essence within the breath. And with our conscious awareness, Mary says, Jin Shin Jitsu teaches me to be present wherever I am. And as we continue with the rhythm of the breath, that which is the rhythm never stops. And now to complete this beautiful self-help, let's change to the other side with your right hand, on your left arm, just above the elbow, and your left hand, just inside your leg, 3 inches approximately above your knee. Again, dropping the shoulders. Feeling yourself becoming more and more relaxed with each breath. Mary says, peace is not in the world. Peace is within yourself. As we exhale and we inhale, perhaps observing that pause between the inhale and the exhale. Mary also said, within each of us lies the power to cast all misery aside and to know complete peace and oneness. to be that beautiful creation of perfect harmony, and to truly know help myself. And when you've completed your self-help, I would just like to mention some final words from Mary that were presented by her family at her memorial. She said, "Thank you, and in unconditional cosmic love, I leave you physically, and I am with you all eternally as one. May each one of you discover the teacher within and be the fun." So we are going to have a lot of fun this evening listening to the other presenters. And thank you everyone for your time this evening with me. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope there were one or two little things about Mary that some of you were unaware of. And I would like to invite Louisa to share Mary's pearls with you all.
So I decided today I wanted to present, as in text 1, it's titled "To Unlock Safety Energy Lock Numbers 11, 12, 4, and 3. And this was, as Heather just talked to you about, Mary's time in the hospital. Wayne Hackett had said, one of Mary's earlier instructors, that Mary's life was saved by Jiro Marai by doing this particular flow. And a year, as Heather said, a year after studying with Jiro, Mary's health projects presented themselves, and she became paralyzed and was hospitalized. And Jiro visited her, as Heather said, frequently, and did this flow for Mary. And after a certain number of days, I don't know how many, he told Mary, he said, "Tomorrow you will be well." And she was. And so no wonder that this flow that I'm about to show you and talk to you about was Mary's favorite flow. And another thing about, one thing I wanted to say was that I was told that this flow was the first flow that Mary used outside of her family in supporting people's energetic harmony with Jin Shin. And Jiro and Mary used numbers in their work and research with Jin Shin. And one of my favorite words that Mary used was aha. So I played with the numbers of aha, and A being number 1 of the alphabet, and H being number 8 of the alphabet, they add to 9. So the same letters are in the ha. So you add 9 plus 9, you get 18, and you get 9 again, because 1 plus 8 is 9 again. And what 9 is about is attainment and fulfillment and completion. And as I took my first class, which was with Mary in 1988 in Boulder, Colorado, I heard Mary use that term a lot, and I wasn't quite getting what she meant. And I would hear her talk with other students after they'd ask questions, and she would say, well, you will have the aha. And there was at one point, because I ask, in general, I ask a lot of questions. I asked Mary a question about something, and she explained it to me, although I didn't get it. And later, in some explanation of something similar, I finally got my aha. And it was like, oh wow, that's so profound. And I loved it. So I've always loved Mary's ahas. To further play with the numbers, I looked at the title of this flow, and to unlock safety energy lock, 2 equals an 8 when you look at the alphabet. Unlock is a 13, and energy is an 11, and lock is 5. And when you add them together, you get 50. So the first time around looking at that, that's what I did. And then I added 11, 12, 4, and 3, and that equals 30. 50, or let's take it lower, a 5, which 50 is magnified 5, is about manifestation and manifesting. And so to unlock safety energy lock, to say it's about manifesting is it's pretty ingenious. And then if you look at adding the 11, 12, 4, and 3, it equals 30. And that's a magnified 3, and 3 is about relationship. So if you have changed, if you add 50 and 30, you get 80. And that's a magnified 8. And 8 is known as magic, as above, so below, but it's about magic. So this flow was magic for Mary. And then I took it one more step. I realized that I had not taken the number. As you can see, it says to unlock safety energy locks numbers. I added the number abbreviation, and that equals 12, which is a 3, which is again about relationship. So if you add that 3 into the 50 and the 30, you get 83, which is an 11. And 11 is about unloading, letting go. So that was very fitting that flow was so powerful, and is such a powerful flow, but was so powerful for Mary. And I didn't say it this way, but 8, I wrote down, brings magic, splendor to your life. That was from my notes from Mary's class. And Mary put this flow on page 26. Well, if you add 2 and 6, you get 8. Again, magic. So just all part of Mary's genius in putting her text together. And I saw someone's notes that said this flow is magical because it's the key to 13 and 10, which is the bus line. And that's because of the 4, because 4 rules the bus line. And 14 and 9, which this flow has 9, safety energy lock 9 in, is ruled, 9 and 14 is ruled by the 12, which is waistline. And then 11 rules the hip line, and that's your 15 and 2, which is the hip line. And Carlos had that flow up. And if you want to put it back up again, Carlos, Mary had the right flow illustrated. And I found out in my studies that whichever flow was presented on the page, Mary felt that was the flow that more often came up with people's projects. So she would suggest that the right flow might be the most appropriate one, but not saying that that's a rule. It's just typical. So for others, because this flow like this would be very difficult to do on yourself, for the right flow, you sit on the left, and then you take your right hand and hold your left 4, And if you could reach your 9-10 area one way or another, maybe in bed you could do it. You hold that, and then your right hand goes down to the left 11. And I didn't say the numbers, what they represent, but as I did say earlier, the 11 talks about unloading. And 9-10 talks about ending one cycle, completion, and 10 is beginning anew. And 4 at the base of the skull is called the window. That's where the energy comes into life and goes out. And the light comes in the window. So then after your right hand is on your left 11 at the base of your neck, you would take your left hand and hold your right ring finger in a circle like this. So in the text, it shows you self-help, make a ring with your thumb and your ring finger. And that is often, they talk about in this flow, your ring finger is very much connected to hormonal balances, particularly with estrogen and progesterone. And that self-help in the text has also been modified. I saw another self-help or quickie that you can put your left hand on your left 3 and 11, and 3 is at the tip of the scapula there. And the 11 is right at the top of the shoulder. And then you make a circle with your right ring finger or thumb. So that's another self-help that you could use, depending on what your preference is or what makes you feel like it feels good. If it feels good, do it. And then I came across another one that's an expanded self-help that I've been using since I found it just in the last few days, and I like it. You put your right hand on your left 4, just as the flow talks about. But instead of going to your 9-10, you use the self-help alternative of what Heather was showing us, the high 19, which helps the 9 and the 10 in the back. So it supports that. So we're doing the same thing with the self-help here. And then after, and if you want to follow along, certainly put your right hand on your left base of your occiput, and then here on your high 19. And we can just rest with that for a minute. And if you feel pulses gently in your fingers, then the energy is beginning to flow. And when you feel them synchronized, then you know that the energy is flowing through very nicely. So then we can move our right hand down to the base of our neck here, at where the neck meets the shoulder, and holding the high 19. And wait for those gentle pulses to come in. If you don't feel the pulses, don't fret over that. Just hold it there for a few minutes. Over time, if you do this, you'll most likely eventually start to feel the pulses. It's sometimes very normal that people don't feel it right away when they're new to Jin Shin. So just rest and relax. And then when you feel that has come in and is balancing, then you just take your left hand and do the circle with the thumb gently resting on the ring fingernail. So we can hold that last gently for a minute. And so now, as I talked about a few minutes ago, We've energized our bust line and our waistline and our hip line. And as a bonus, we're balancing our hormones as well. The note in the text says that when safety energy locks 11, 12, and 4 become locked, they place a strain on safety energy lock 3. That's right there. It says the second hold in the picture is safety energy lock 3. And it's due to usage of the right arm. I've heard overusage because I think that's what it means. We use our arm all the time, but when we overuse it, that can cause the opposite muscles to become tense and the energy to flow towards the strained muscles. And it stagnates and eventually locks 4, 12, 11, and 3. So as you can see in the diagram on the right, the incorrect energy ascends from the right leg and it flows through the left abdomen and goes through the left safety energy lock 23, which is the base of the ribs there. And then it flows from there into the right back above kind of the top of the shoulder blade and flows along the front of the arm to the thumb. And then it flows down from the little finger. If we had our arm up, then it would be down our little finger to the back of the arm and to the top of the right shoulder. And then it flows up the right side of the nose and it crosses over the top of the head and then down the left cervical vertebrae across the top of the shoulder joint. And this causes the left head to tense and the shoulder to strain and be sore. So that kind of makes sense if you look at that incorrect energy that's flowing and how it can cause the opposite side to be tense and strained. And there's some projects that this flow supports, health projects. If someone has whiplash or neck projects, this could be a good flow for them. Or great tension in the nerves, discs in the neck, vertebrae out of alignment in the neck, facial palsy, which I think of as Bell's palsy. It could be some other facial palsies, facial palsies, Parkinson's, asthma, dizziness, and hiccups. With hiccups, you would hold the 4 just below the left ear if you're doing the right flow, off safety energy lock 4, which would be a wider safety energy lock of 4 for hiccups. And then it's also good for blood pressure and leg projects. And I was told that Mary uses for a client with neck pain, which certainly would make sense. And the right flow clears the left 9 area, which the 9 area is at the base of the scapula on the opposite side of where you're holding the 4 and 11s. And this flow also goes very well with another flow that's called unlocking the safety energy lock numbers 20, 21, and 22 flow. Would be very complementary. So this is what I had to present. I hope you've learned something new, and I want you to enjoy this magical and all-inclusive flow. So with that, we have another presenter, and I would like to introduce Joy Schultz, I believe, I hope I have that right, and out of Wisconsin. And Joy has been a practitioner for many, many years, so I'm excited to listen to what she has to say.
Hi, everyone. I'm Joy. I wish you a great and fluid a day as you are able to handle. And whether your time with us is your morning, your afternoon, your evening, or perhaps even the darkest hour of your night, welcome. As I'm going through this class, I'm restructuring my complementary healthcare business with the additions of social media tools of the current era. And the new name will be Joy's Helping Hand. And I've even come up with a logo that I feel incorporates some of the philosophy of ART Jin Shin and perhaps might generate questions of potential clients. It's going to be some use of the figure 8. For expanding your personal connection with your imagination, I suggest you interlace your fingers. And as you see, as the fingers come out at the bottom, there's if I were to hold them up, you would see the cup. See the cup between the fingers? So I leave it, and then the cup is between where the fingers bend. And then you bring these interlaced fingers and to the back of the skull, where the rounded-most portion of the skull is. And this is your safety energy lock or personal energy center, number 4. And you can also, if you allow yourself to lean back on your chair and rest the arms on the framework of your chair, perhaps you'll recognize this as what we call the executive thinking pose that we see of the suits in the business world sitting as they're thinking great thoughts to do with their business. Applying numerology to the English language, the letters of imagine and imagination both add up to 4. The function of 4 is manifestation, which is a mighty fine connection to imagination, since for anything to manifest, there first has to be the idea of it. I'm going to bring my arms down because my shoulders hate this. You might not have a chair conducive to your comfort, of leaning back and being comfortable. You might not have enough pillows to support the arms. You might not be laying in bed or on the floor or your yard or even laying on water in your swimming pool. But we have 2 alternate personal energy centers that also connect with 4. The 22, which talks about adaptation, is around the area of the collarbone. You may feel tenderness above the collarbone. You may feel tenderness below the collarbone. You may feel tenderness on the collarbone. That's where your personal energy center 22 is saying, "Hey, see me, be with me." But 2 plus 2 equals 4. So this is another way, and perhaps a more comfortable way, if you want to be protective of your core. If you're not feeling quite safe, you can cross your arms, or you can do the same side. Whatever feels right for you. And then the third alternative is approximately one hand width below. Here's the collarbone. So approximately one hand width below that hold is where 13 lies. And 13 is a 4. 1 plus 3 is 4. And 13 talks about your inner child. And what's more creative and what's more imaginative than your child? I mean, that's a gift that the universe and the creator gave us very much. So play with these 3 holds while I continue to talk. But like I said, this is the original that Mary recommended, and but my shoulders aren't happy with that today. And my focus is not going to be Mary's birth or the youth history. Heather's covered that wonderfully. And plus, there are many genealogy tools out there, and the United States is rather famous for keeping statistical records. So, you know, you can always do your own research and you come to your own conclusions. Why, for instance, Mary was known to constantly carry a dictionary with her wherever she went. My personal understanding is that during the conflict with Japan in World War I, the United States got a tad paranoid and rounded up all the Japanese citizens, whether they were brand new immigrants or born Americans, and we had our own prisoner of war camps for a bit. It's not one of the United States' finest moments, but at that time, we felt we needed to protect the country. I never met Mary in my journeys of this art of Jin Shin. That's one of my deepest regrets. But this is the Mary I've come to know from her students. Mary Burmeister was known to suggest to her students, now know myself. Applying numerology to the English alphabet of that phrase, the now, or N 14, O 15, W 23, equals 52 or 7. And 7 talks about perfection. One interpretation of perfection is, you are simply perfect as you are, effortlessly. I'm always telling my cats when they're saying, hey, I woke up, you weren't there, is everything all right? You know, when they're doing that, and I say, you are the best you that you can be. And know, the word know, K, the 11, plus that now that we just covered, equals 63, or 9. And 9 talks about endless endings and beginningless beginnings. Applying the endless part of that definition to energy, energy is endlessly densing down to become manifest in our physical world. And our physical world is endlessly thinning out to become part of the energetic world. If you don't believe me, go sometime to your nearest stream or river, or if you're blessed to be on the coastline, go and see what that water does to the shoreline. And then go back in a few years and see what the changes are. The world is constantly thinning back out to being energy. And then the final word of that phrase, myself, M 13, Y 25, S 19, E 5, L 12, F 6. That's an 80 or an 8. And like Louisa pointed out, 8 talks about the magic of life, both seen, both unseen. Some of it we can only see with a microscope, but it's still there. Now, if we add the 7 of now, the 9 of no, and the 8 of myself, we get 24. And 24 talks about harmonizing chaos. Now, I interpret the action of harmonizing as clearing out the excess and clearing out that which is too little. We've been told we can't be angry, so we stuff it and we hide it. But it's still there, but we've got it locked down. Or we've been told that it's okay to express ourselves. And man, there's Mount Vesuvius just waiting to happen. Whoosh. But like Aesop's fable of Goldilocks and the 3 bears, that whoosh, that Mount Vesuvius, that too muchness is like Papa Bear's bed. It was just way too hard, way too unyielding, just way too. For all we know, Papa Bear liked his sheets starched, so they were just way too also scratchy, unyielding. And then you've got Mama Bears. And that bed was too soft, too mushy, too giving. And then in the middle, Goldilocks found the baby's bed, and it was just right. Well, that's what harmonizing is about. It's not about expanding your anger. It's not about expanding your worry. It's not about diminishing your anger or diminishing your worry. It's about trimming off the excess and leaving you just enough that you can use it as a tool to cope with your daily life. 24 talks about the just right amount of chaos. And the 2 plus the 4 of 24 is a 6, which talks about balance. Again, just the right amount of balance. Keep life from being stagnant, hard, and unyielding. Mary's one and only handout was called the Now Know Myself page. Her students nicknamed it the answer sheet because that's where she pointed them when they had a question. So I've been told. Perhaps Mary was telling us that while we come from the perfect blueprint of 6 steps, and that blueprint gives us the possibility of a life magical with its endless possibilities. Life on this earth is always a two-edged sword, so there's always the possibility of seeing only the negatives. And when we see only the negatives, we create the attitudes, which causes the excess chaos, which we can harmonizing by getting to know and help myself. See where I'm going? It's a complete and endless circle. The action or function of 9. Mary Burmeister studied one-on-one with Jiro Murai, our highly intuitive founder, rediscovered the art of Jin Shin through his lifetime, and taught her not just the technique of helping others, but the philosophy. She gave us that philosophy in the form of 2 textbooks, which took her roughly 22 years to transition from her thinking about what he gave her in Japanese and the Eastern medical tradition of approaching and achieving harmony to the West, which is rather newer as far as the history of nations goes, the Western thinking. And she originally started her text 1, what is now currently called our text 2, which was the more physical. Dealt with the more physical. And I think that was a reasonable way for her to present the art, because we all live in, work in, and play in this very physical realm 24/7. So we know that best. 22 years. That's a lot of spine. That's a lot of belief in herself and in the art. Being that it's my current experience that the dynamics of the social unit we call family is especially programmed to keep its members in specific roles for the survival of family, I imagine Mary, with her hands-on use of the art of Jin Shin within the dynamics of her own family, had the occasion to trigger the oft-portrayed teenage response of when their parents do something different that other parents are not doing, of, my folks are so embarrassing. Not a denigration against the Burmeister family. It's just as I've watched families through the decades, it's just a fact of teenage life, and maybe even younger. So she probably often reminded herself of one of her statements of self-empowerment, which is, it is not my business what you think of me. I just have to take care of me, keep on living abundantly. Jiro Murai, he had a liking for Japanese eating contests before he got ill. And then he recovered from that illness through meditation, fasting, and the powerful harmonizing hand positions that he learned in his journeys. Mary had a lifetime liking for an occasional late night ice cream. Both our predecessors, our founders, were very human in their likes and their dislikes. Mary reportedly always reminded her students about using their imagination and the importance of that use. She quoted Albert Einstein with his statement of, "Imagination is more important than knowledge." Both Mary and Mr. Einstein were speaking about feeling the mystery first and allowing understanding to add its breath of fresh air second, rather than forcing understanding first, which all too often limits imagination, because all too often that first encounter with something new, it's just the edge. It's not the core. And when you don't understand, when you haven't experienced the core, sometimes that trying to understand the edge gives you a whole different perspective on what it is you're trying to understand. Now again, imagine and imagination both add to 4. So holding the base of your skull, and you can also hold your ring finger, because as we count the fingers, the ring finger is number 4. And holding your 4s, the 4 at the skull, the 22 at the collarbone, the 13 right above about where the heart is, right above and just above the breast, and holding your ring finger. This will broaden your horizons in the realm of your imagination. And here are Mary's words about imagination. Imagination can move us from boundaries. Use imagination to find answers rather than attitudes. When you find the answer within or about a problem, it is done. Dream beyond achievement. I imagine Mary's horizons were pretty broad in the realm of imagination, as by the end of her life, she has been quoted as saying, "I now know that I know nothing." About dreams, Mary said, "A man without a dream is like a bird without wings." She always encouraged her students to have big dreams, as those dreams would take them beyond current boundaries, beyond current accomplishments, and would take those students to new adventures. Now, to support her students with their dreams, their big dreams, when they called, she always picked up the phone and was available. Now, for me, between a cell phone that loves to go to voicemail before I figure out how to answer the call in 9 calls out of 10, and a land phone that I've been known to leave unplugged for up to weeks at a time in an attempt to discourage the robot calls, even with being on the do not call list the state offers, because those robot calls increase to a frequency of about every 15 minutes from 7 a.m. in the morning till 10 p.m. at night. And who on earth calls anyone after 9 p.m. unless it's an emergency? So I'm still working on that, Mary's examples with technology. That stuff. Finally, when her students would turn to her to say thank you, she would say, "If you want to say thank you to me, you go and be happy. You go and be healthy. There is only one of us, and your health and your harmony contribute to the health and the harmony of everyone. If you want to say thank you and express gratitude, this is the best way to say thank you to Mary." An author I enjoy has written, "Technology and science don't hold a candle to the human spirit." Thank you, Mary Burmeister, for living your life in a way that honored your spirit. Since I didn't know Mary personally, I need to give you a footnote. This presentation was culled out of my notes of day one, so I've got 2 more days. I could make 2 more presentations down the road. Anyway, these notes today came out of day one of the first 3-day Mary Treasures Conference led by Wayne Hackett in 2024. The opinions and conclusions are mine. And as I've been healthier, my own testimony is that as I've been healthier on the whole, since finding the Art of Jin Shin in roughly 1999, after a long and winding path to attempt to understand man's inhumanity to woman back when I was 32, I figure my current healthy status continues the energy of saying, thank you, Mary.
Thank you so much, Joy. And Heather and Louise, too. You did a great job.
Carlos, I was inspired by Heather's passion, by Louisa's living sharing, and by Joy's imagination, also talking about that. I want to share something, okay? I can talk about Mary and I can say we can speak a week about Mary, but I have one thing that comes to my mind and changes my life, and it's about understanding and seeing the sides of that. Mary has a so simple way of teaching us so profound messages and so easy by simplifying, and that's the point. 5 years ago, I don't know if everybody knows about that, more or less 5 years ago, we did start a new adventure because our level of understanding just flows away because we get a pandemic global situation and we need to restart. And as we were lost at that moment, but just at that moment, moving a little bit further, we have friends, we have passions, we have living ways, and we have imagination. We have all these pieces that our friends just bring it now, and we just put it all together. And then we ask for some advices from Mary. And I get a partner, which is Marcia, and with this partnership, we just get a way of keeping moving. And at that moment, we have some friends. I call them friends since there, almost more than 10 years. And we were talking with Carlos. I think Wayne was in the same meeting. And we were talking about a specific date when we get all these messages about passion, living, imagination, and understanding. And we were waiting for Mary's tips. And then Carlos bring us something about astrology. And then we get aha. But then Wayne just pop-ups with something a little shamanic. We was just in the right time of the white buffalo. And when the white buffalo comes in the astrological ways, we were blessed. And that was the blessing message. And then we just heard Mary saying, simplify, simplify, simplify. Be the exhale. Then be the inhale. And that was just what we did. We exhale, We inhale, we get blessed, we get Mary's tips, Carlos' orientation, Wayne's orientation, our union and partnership, and we just build our own smile. Be the smile. When you are smiling, you are being healthy. When you are healthy, you are being healthy. So be healthy, be happy, and we just build our dream. Let's begin today. After 5 days, we are here with you, doing what we thought 5 years ago we were dreaming in having a community where everybody can talk about the art, bringing Mary's message to us, to our friends, to the world, wherever it goes, it flows. This is a dream coming true. So thank you all. Thank you so much. This is our dream, and we are really, really happy to have you all with us. Thank you so much. Thank you, Carlos. Thank you, my friend. Thank you, my dears. And your turn, Carlos.
I believe, we are here because a conjunction of two amazing things. Or, if you prefer, the dedication of two brilliant minds. Jeremiah, because he picked the pieces of something that was lost and put all together in a kind of coherence that makes sense and support with a profound philosophy. And Mary took it, received it, this gift from Jeremiah, and she dedicated her life to spread all over the world. So, in the art of Jin Shin, used to say, first we exhale and then we inhale. But the history of the art is the opposite. Jeremiah inhaled, collecting pieces, little pieces, and put all together. And then he gave to Mary. Mary exhale and spread this gift all over the world. And we are here because both are brilliant minds. Both are very special spirits. And it happens, I know, and Mary say it is as it is. So it happens because I think the humankind was ready to receive this gift, and the humankind was in need of this gift. Because all of the challenges we are dealing today, we, as Douglas mentioned about the pandemic, it was a great support for all those who knew the art of Jin Shin. I heard from friends, from students, they say, I'm so thankful because in difficult moments I knew to practice a simple self-help or simply hold a finger. And I taught my loved ones, and it helps us to deal with that weird year we all lived. So, but I'm thinking more and more about it, and I believe we need to follow Jiro's and Mary's steps. And I think it's up to us to keep this gift, to keep this art alive. So we need to know that we have something unique. Mary mentioned each one of us as we are a unique expression of the source. So each one has a unique gift, and so we can use our gifts to preserve the message, but much more than this, to enrich the message and to keep the art alive. So thank you so much for all of you, my friends, for being here, because I know you're doing your part in this journey.
But we need to check, okay? We are in an open, free meeting. Who else wants to share something about Mary? Please raise your hand. Talk about Mary. Take this opportunity.
Or simply unlock your microphone.
Space bar also helps with that. But I still not seeing hands.
We have Averill.
The first thing I read when I was handed a book, Touch for Health, not sure. That's the name. Okay, was the scoliosis story, and so I have scoliosis, and so I don't know how many times I've put myself to sleep by holding the ischium and the shoulder, and just having that love. I was a young girl the story was a young girl that she treated, I think in Japan. Anyway, that's my story.
So it goes to Joanna first, then we get to Linda. Please unmute yourself, Joanna.
Hi.
That's it.
Yes. I just want to say a couple of things. First, my very first class that I took with Mary, there was a man with a very severe scoliosis. He was in his 40s. He had had scoliosis since he was about 11. And over the 5 days of that class, his back changed so much that it blew my mind and blew everybody's mind. He could feel it. Everyone could see it. It was just amazing. And there's many other stories of amazing things that I've seen and other people I've seen in these classes. But I also wanted to say that after Mary's accident, I did go to Scottsdale and have sessions with her. And she and Alice were working together because they weren't sure about having her do sessions by herself because she wasn't verbal in the same way that she used to be. And when I came in the room, she turned her back on me and started looking out the window. And she started saying, 14's empty, 15's empty. I thought, what is she talking about? Is she looking at parking spaces or something? I didn't know. Sure. And then I realized she's getting information about my safety energy locks, and she hasn't hardly looked at me or touched me yet. And then I had a week of amazing sessions with her. But she really seemed to have one foot in both worlds after that accident. And it used to be when I would ask her, what self-help should I do for this? She would tell me a self-help. But during that week, if I asked her, what should I do for this, Mary, she would say, ask God to take it from you. And it was frustrating in one way, but very, very profound in another way. And I was so grateful to her for staying on the planet as long as she did, when she obviously had connected with spirit in some amazing way during her accident. So that's what I wanted to share.
Linda, how about you?
Hello.
Hi.
Haven't seen. How are you doing? It's so great to be with everybody, always. I unfortunately never got to know Mary. I didn't learn about Jin Shin until, 30 years ago. I had terrible sciatica for a couple months. It was an agony. I did everything I knew. I did Feldenkrais, I did massage, I did acupuncture, you name it, I did it. Nothing worked. And I was attending the local astrological society meeting. And this guy's got this chart up on the board and this lady on the table in front, and he's standing, hands here and hands there and hands there. And this little inner voice says, he can help you. Okay. So I need to see you. He says, okay, what's the problem? I said, sciatica. He So I got to warn you, it may get worse before it gets better, but as long as there's change, we're heading in the right direction. Sign me up, you know. So I went in and I'm laying there and I'm real sensitive to energy, but wasn't really feeling much. All of a sudden, ow! And he said, did you feel something? Yeah, it was like a 4-inch flaming hot needle stuck in my hip. Bing, like that. And that was it. Like, whoa. And then and I'm just laying there and he finishes the session. You know, I'm laying there for like an hour and I get off the table and kind of walk out to the car, still stiff, driving home and thinking, well, as long as I is, we'll stop at the store. I park the car. I'm halfway across the parking lot and suddenly realize it's gone. The pain is totally gone. No muscle, nothing. It was like, whoo, magic. Wow. But unfortunately, he never told me it's self-help. There's classes. Here's books. You know, and I'm working and everything. So I'm working self-employed, whatever. So 25 years later, 6 years ago now, suddenly it's back again. Oh, no. So I look on the website, where can I find somebody? And I called Blythe Fair, and was the oldest practitioner, like 30 years. And I called, left a message. Called the next day, left another message. The next message. Then I look at, okay, who else is around? Called her like 3 days in a row. There must be a meeting or something that nobody's returning calls. So finally I got hold of the second gal. I needed some help. So she says, okay, what's the problem? I told her sciatica, fine. So I go up and she has her little book open. She's put her hands here and here and here. By the end of the session, it's about 70% gone. And the next morning, perfectly gone. And she mentioned it's self-help and I'm teaching a class next week. Thank you. And that got me going. You know, so then I, Blythe later, she calls me a few days later, said, I don't know what happened. The phone company just gave me your message. Are they? You know, what was the problem? And I told, 11, 15, 25. So I'm writing down the numbers because in the meantime, I bought the book and I got the cards. So now I know what the numbers mean. If it happens again, I know what to do. And so I was like, thank you, thank you. And I started self-help classes with Blythe. Then she moved to Tennessee. And I've been studying ever since. You know, I had arranged to see Carlos. I'd paid for Carlos's meeting, teaching here in April of 2020. COVID hit. No class. Now what do I do? So then they said, well, we'll try it online. We've never done it before. And I've been ever since, and I'm eternally grateful. And I'm spreading the word every day to people I know. I've got a friend from home I hadn't seen for years, and he's a science teacher. Very, very scientific. And what's all this weird stuff? He bought the book, ART Jin Shin, this last week. I was telling him a couple weeks ago, hold your fingers. That's amazing. It really feels different. And so I said, yeah. So we're making input and I'm giving information, sharing. And so we may get into that little scientific brain of his. He said, the book is very interesting. There's a lot. Wow. Yay. So I do what I can. Unfortunately, I never knew Mary, and I would have loved to have been with her. But like you, Carlos, this tied together all of the metaphysical stuff that I learned 50 years ago. There's this and this and this. They're diverse. And this is like, yes, one lovely package that puts it all together. So thank you.
I know that Denise has something to say about Mary. Can you share something with us that comes from your heart?
I think, well, there's a couple of things. I was intimidated by Mary. I was overwhelmed by the depth of her knowledge and frustrated because I learned better from a picture of the whole that explains all the parts and their interrelationships. And Mary often spoke at a larger manifested, a larger organization of ideas that I'd question her a lot, but it was slow for me. And I remember when I took my first class with her, and we had people who live up here in my little area of Northern California. who had already studied with her, and we used to receive sessions from her, starting like in 79, I think. And then in massage school, our teacher went to study in Santa Rosa with Mary and put Jinshin Jitsu as part of his curriculum. So we got to practice in a massage school study that I did. Then I studied with Mary in 85, and my first thought was, this information taught in 1 week reminds me of what it must be like to go through, is it 14 or more years of medical school before somebody can become a doctor. And actually the amount of information that we learn in Jinshin is, it takes more, I think, more study than that. One's always learning. So from a personal level, let me see what I want to say. From a personal level, even though I was overwhelmed, the joy for me has been in all these years of study, and now I'm 40 from my first class. I have such enthusiasm for the beautiful connectedness of all this information, and all the wonderful perspectives and ways to look at the interrelatedness of everything. And I appreciate people bringing more esoteric information into the study. And I appreciate you guys in your classes. I just want to say the last one that we got to hear Carlos do on the organs was beautiful, amazingly beautiful presentation. So Mary's enthusiasm and wisdom, and amazing personality was my inspiration, I'm sure, to continue on this journey, because feeling the magic of feeling balance and harmony in a session is so indescribably, it was such a gift. And I'm just happy to be with y'all, and I thank all the presenters. That's it.
Caroline, do you want to share something with us, Caroline? Unmute, please.
Now it works, yeah. Maybe also thanks again that I can join that group too. And I was learning a lot about Mary's life today. It was very interesting. And I just added, like all the ladies before, I added the numbers of today, and it comes to 20, which is 2, the wisdom, and the breath is our wisdom. So it all comes back to the essence. First comes the breath, then the fingers, then everything else. And the day today is actually the 4, which lives on the ring finger, the 7 of the month, which lives on the ring finger, and number 9, who or which lives on the thumb. So we have our breath helper, our mind specialist, our skin specialist, and this mudra for today. And what a wonderful day to be together today. Thanks. That was my thought.